Hello guys, and welcome back to this new video. So today we are going to talk about 15 things you probably don't know about Japan. So let's start immediately with our curiosity list. So point number 1, Japan is a country of very educated people. The level of literacy is above 98%, which means that a lot of people, the majority, the great majority of people read, they have good education, they push for being educated and reading a lot. So that's very important. That is due to a system of reforms that has been introduced after the Second World War. Point number 2, blood group. So a blood group is very important. It's kind of like the horoscope, because in the 1920s, what has developed is this idea, similar to, again, the horoscope, that having a certain blood group blood type is very important and can determine whether or not you could be my partner for life. And so the understanding here is that there are certain groups like A, B, and B that are very discriminated because they are mostly present in Ainu. That is this minority, marginalized from the main society in Japan. And so having a certain blood type, a blood group, is very important and can be used to pick up women, can be used as a way to approach, can be used as, you know, a factor, a determining factor in choosing your partner. Point number 3. Point number 3 here is the amount of earthquakes that Japan experiences. Japan is made of 6,852 islands, and 90% of earthquakes on Earth happen in Japan. That is why they have wonderful structure and architecture. And they have a very advanced system so that the building can shake without collapsing unless it's an earthquake that is extremely strong and intense. But luckily in the last few years we haven't seen that a lot, so that's a very good thing. Japanese architecture is splendid when it comes to that, because they have developed this way of building buildings and structures that are very resistant and can endure very intense earthquakes. Point number 4. The trains there are very punctual. Now, we in the West, we calculate the delay of a train, depends on where you live, but we usually I calculate that in minutes, yes, but more in hours, right? So I consider a delay like starting from an hour of delay, right? Because almost an hour of delay is to be taken into consideration when I move. Now, it also depends on where I live. I'm not saying that it's like that necessarily everywhere in Europe, but it tends to be. Except, you know, a few places. But anyway, we calculate delay in minutes for sure, right? That we could say easily, right? In Japan, they calculate delay in seconds. In Japan, they calculate delay in seconds, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. Like, who cares? But I'm sure Japanese care, okay? But fascinating to me. Anyway, so in 27, the delay was like 18 seconds, and in 2012, or something like that, the delay was 36 seconds. That is for the Shinkansen, the bullet train that travels at a speed of 285 kilometers per hour. And if you consider 18 or 36 seconds of delay, you are very lucky. Let me tell you that. You are very lucky. And also very precise, so good for you. I certainly don't live like that. Anyway, so that is the Japanese culture, I guess. Point number 5. In 675, there was an emperor known with the noun of Tenmo, and Tenmo prohibited meat. Now, specifically, this was meat of beef, monkeys, and pets. The Japanese society of that time became vegetarian, and it stayed vegetarian for a very long time. Vegetarianism was interrupted for a brief period when Japan came in contact with the philosophy of Christian missionaries. We're talking about 16th century. It is true, though, that the decree that banned the use of meat was only from April to September, I believe. Yet it is true that meat became to be scarce and also to be scarcely used, and so not to be very much consumed. So a huge part of Japan became vegetarian, and then slowly and gradually the whole Japan became vegetarian. Now, officially that stopped in 1872 when another emperor decided that enough is enough, and so meat was re-established in the staple meals that Japanese have. Specifically, Kobe beef is very delicious, one of the best in the world. So let's move on. Point number 6. Up until 2015, dancing in public was absolutely forbidden, prohibited. This was a long-standing law, actually approved after the Second World War. That is to avoid prostitution. Stayed in place for 67 years, and then in 2015 was abolished. It's an old law. Now it can be possible to dance publicly after midnight. Point number 7. There are different types of vows one can take. There is the Eshaku, which is about 15 degrees. That is mostly reserved to people you're informal with. And just to congratulate with people, so that's 15 degree of inclination. Then there's Kei-rei, that is the bow of 30 degrees. That is more for people that are higher up in the hierarchy. And then there's a Sai-kei-rei, which is that of 45 degrees. That's reserved to the emperor, but that is also for when you have hugely royally messed up and you need to apologize. So that's like a 45 degree bow that you take in front of people to actually say that you're very sorry. Point number 8. Japan has the higher distribution per capita of vending machines. It's like 1 for every 23 persons. Like, what that happens, like nowhere else. So there are supermarkets, and supermarkets are open 24/7, so no issues with that trend. But then in rural areas, to substitute the presence of a supermarket, we do have vending machines. Vending machines are 5.52 million in the whole soil of Japan, in all land, spread out wonderfully to assist people with food, drinks, mostly soft drinks, I'm assuming, but also some unusual elements. For instance, unusual for us, of course. For instance, manga, and for instance, brief knickers, in general, underwear of female students. Let me know, comment on that, please. Alright, let's move on. But I'll leave the comment to you, right? So don't forget to actually comment below. Let us know your thoughts. That's very important. Anyway, moving on, please, moving on. Point number 9. In August 1945, the Emperor Hirohito signed his surrender, and so the Japanese surrendered to the Americans. Now, his message was broadcasted and pre-recorded, and so there was a major of the army, Kenji Hatanaka, who decided to organize a coup to occupy the palace in order to get this message, the message that was able to sneak out of the palace in a laundry basket, which is exactly the same tactic, I want to say, that Queen Mary of Scotland used to organize the plot against Queen Elizabeth. That's exactly how they found out and then actually beheaded Queen Mary of Scotland. Anyway, so same tactic, identical. So the message sneaked out. So they went, Hatanaka with the part of the army at least, went to the headquarters of this radio, and there they occupied the radio, but yet the message was released, went on air, Japan surrendered, and then of course he committed suicide. Speaking of which, let's go to samurai. Now we have already made a video on samurai, so I want to remind you to actually have a look and watch it. But samurais were also practicing in the middle of the street with random pedestrians, with random people walking, and they were kind of like trying to kill them with one movement of the sword. That was, for a certain period of time, very common. Now, we do know that samurai do not exist anymore, that there were like 2 edicts, 2 decrees that prohibited officially samurai in Japan, but that was a practice. Point number 11. Takejiro Onishi. That is the guy who created, who invented, who made up the strategy of kamikaze. And when Japan surrendered and he realized that all this strategy and all of this human sacrifice was actually worthless, he also committed suicide, not by becoming himself a kamikaze, but actually by committing the ritual suicide that was typical for samurai, and so he killed himself like that. He couldn't stand the dishonor of having sacrificed so many lives for basically nothing, and so he did that. Point number 12, Japan is, and that is a very well-known fact, a very old country. The demographics say that in and the statistics related to it say that in 2015 the amount of kids was 16.5 million, and the amount of pets was 21.3 million. So we already know that in Japan there are more pets than human beings, or than young human kids, and that is why they are making up. They're inventing this. They are inventing these robots that could take care of old people exactly when they're gonna be in need of assistance. Point number 13, Japanese policemen. They can walk with you, they can pay your taxi if you are too drunk, they are basically at your service. Japan is a very safe country where usually nothing happens except what happened very, very recently with the Shinzo Abe, but it's technically speaking a very safe country. There are no weapons circulating, the rate of murder is very low in the whole country. So it's a very safe country, and policemen are really at the service of its population. They can help you cross the street or put you in a taxi if you're too drunk and things like that. Point number 14, the Kabuki theater. Now, the Kabuki was invented in 1603. Primarily, this was the invention, the creation of Hizumo no Honishi, who was a woman, and he invented the Kabuki theater initially for women, where there were daimyos and all the lords there witnessing this sort of spectacles. However, we also know that more than 20 years later, less than 30 years later, in 1629, there was a riot in the Kabuki theater at the Kabuki theater in Kyoto. And since then, the Kabuki theater was reserved for men. So it's only allowed 2 men to perform there. Now, that also was to eliminate the risk of a very elitarian sort of prostitution. Put it in other terms. And now we got to point number 15. So point number 15 has to do with rubbish cans, trash cans. There aren't many spread all over the territory. That is because a few years back, trash cans were suspected to be the primary choice for a chemical attack with sarin. So that's why there aren't so many. That's one reason though. The other reason is there's a very detailed guide known as Gummy Guide on how you should split your rubbish and actually like recycle all your rubbish. That is for home. And so people, they're eating, they have like the remains of their eating and they transport them from one place to another because you can't litter. This is a very clean territory, right? It's very clean where people are very precise, so it's not like you can throw in the street, whatever. And there are also not many rubbish cans, so you are forced to go back home and kind of like recycle your rubbish like that. I wish it was some of Japanese culture were also here, but anyway, please don't forget to comment. Let us know all of what you think about this 15 points that we have just finished to discuss. We'll talk next time with a new episode. In the meanwhile, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We'll talk next time. Bye guys!